it's Marie, and it's the end of autumn, which means it's time for another book haul. These are all the books that I acquired between the start of March and now, which is the end of May. And there are 17 of them. And interestingly, uh, just over half of them this season have been ebooks and audiobooks, which is interesting and unusual for me, but good because I'm trying to uh, move more towards digital titles and less physical titles, just because I want to try and save my shelf space for books that I really love and I'm going to read more than once. So it's a work in progress, but this season I've succeeded. So let's begin with the audiobooks. So back in March, I was very lucky. H.L. Moore, who is an Australian author of fantasy and science fiction, she reached out to me and offered to gift me an advanced reader copy of her latest short story, Ship of Fools. And I I sort of discovered H.L. Moore last year, I think, early last year. She's written two novels so far, and there's a third one coming, but we don't know when yet. And she's written several short stories, and I've really enjoyed all of them. So when she offered to send me a copy of Ship of Fools, I was very grateful. This one is a particularly good short story. I wrote a review for it. I did. I wrote a review for it, and I will leave a link in the description with links to all the books that I'm talking about today, in case you want to find any more specific information about any of them, because some of them I can't remember stuff and others I haven't read yet, so, you know. But Ship of Fools was really good. I think I gave it 4 stars. Uh, and it's it's a science fiction short story about a investigation into a cleaning crew who have cleaned up a spaceship sort of vessel that has been missing for like 12 years or something and has only recently turned up. And this cleaning crew was hired by a corrupt government agency to clean out the ship. And so this detective is trying to figure out what was in the ship, why they were hired to clean it, where the ship has been, what this agency is trying to hide, all that good stuff. And yeah, it was a fantastic story. A really good example of an excellent short story, I think. So if short stories are something that you're interested in or want to get into further, or that you're trying to write and improve yourself, I would suggest Ship of Fools is a good one to look at. Then, I think it was only a couple of weeks ago, I went and grabbed Can You Ever Forgive Me by H.L. Moore as well. This is the only short story of hers, I think, at least in this series, that I haven't read. I believe there are 3 published at the moment. Can You Ever Forgive Me? I don't know really what this one is about. According to the blurb on Goodreads, it's about cyborgs and humans, and in the past there was a cyborg-human war. And that must have some relevance to what's happening in the current day of the story, but that's as far as I know. I haven't read this one yet. I don't know why I haven't gotten around to it, because it's only a short story, so I should have. But maybe I'll try and do that soon. But yeah, so looking forward to that one. And whatever else Moore writes in the future, because she's great, and she's Australian, and she's an indie author, so all good reasons to support her if you're looking for something in that realm. I also picked up Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. This one sort of crossed my radar because I saw a few people reading it on Goodreads about a month ago. I don't know why everyone suddenly was reading it at the same time, but it seemed like that's what happened. And I thought it sounded good as well, so I picked it up. It's a novella. It's only 112 pages. And unfortunately, I DNF'd it. I got to I think 39%, and so I was almost halfway, but it it just felt like for a book to be 112 pages and for me to be almost halfway and still feel like nothing had happened, that was a problem for me. So that was a shame. Silver in the Wood, it's about a man named Henry, I think. Um, and he buys one of those big old English country estates that has like expansive grounds. And there's a wood on these grounds, and there's a like immortal, he's called a wild man who lives in this wood. He's like the spirit of the forest, basically. Um, and they meet. And I mean, the implication is that they're going to have some kind of love story romance. But it just sort of felt like that's all the story was building towards, was this love scene. I don't know if that's what it was actually building towards because I didn't finish it, but that's what it felt like. Like it was just all set dressing for whatever this physical interaction was going to end up being. Um, so I can't really comment on it further. I didn't enjoy it particularly, otherwise I would have finished it. But I know a lot of other people have. So, if you're interested, go check out some other reviews. Maybe you'll enjoy it. I hope you do, because someone should. And then, more bad news on the ebook front. It hasn't been a huge success now that I think about it, but I also acquired You and Me and the rest of the story by Tal Bauer, who is an indie author. And I bought these because I've seen a lot of love for Tal Bauer and these stories in particular in various bookish places that I follow over the last few months. They're, from what I can gather, Bauer writes predominantly male romance contemporary stories. And I am on an ongoing quest to find adult contemporary romances that work for me. Like, so often they seem to have a, a an odd balance. Well, odd for me, an odd balance of like smart to plot or character development. By which I mean it's like 95% smart and 5% plot and character development, and that's not the ratio that I'm interested in. So I started reading You and Me, which is a story about Luke, who is 40, and in the last year his wife has passed away, and so it's just him and his teenage son Emmett, and they do not get on. They have a very tense relationship. Emmett is like one of the football stars of the high school. This is an American high school, so it's American football. And in an effort to get closer to his son, Luke joins like this parental volunteer group that is part of the football team. And while he's there, he meets another single dad of one of the football players, and his name is Landon. And Landon's son is best friends with Luke's son, but these two dads have never met, which is weird to me. But so it just so happens that Landon is gay and an ex-Mormon, so a bit contentious. And Luke and Landon become like pretty much instant best friends. And Luke falls in love with Landon, even though he, up to this point, has assumed that he's straight. So he sort of has this bisexual awakening, which I do appreciate stories of that nature. for characters who are middle-aged, because so often we see them for teenagers and young people. So to have a character experience this sort of situation in his 40s is quite interesting. I also really enjoyed the relationship between Luke and Emmett. I thought that was very well done. I had problems with the way that Luke's ex-wife was portrayed. Um, they, she's his ex-wife in the fact that she died and they're no longer married. They weren't divorced, but it, I don't know. For me, I have issues with the way that women and wives can sometimes be painted as evil, basically. Like, she had no redeeming qualities. She was awful to him. She was manipulative and she treated him so badly. And so, there was no love lost between them. So it's okay that he can move on now with this other person. But to me, it's just a bit of a cop-out. Like, there must have been something good about her. You know what I mean? It just feels lazy. And also it makes me question Luke's character, because we're hearing the story through his eyes, right? Which is weird because he fell in love with her at some point, and they got married and had Emmett very young. But even then, it feels like he didn't have much that was good to say about her. They were different personalities, and that was why he liked her in the first place. But then as they got older, those different personalities just became a clash. So we don't hear that there's anything good about her in the recent past. But from what it sounds like, Luke had no fault in this whatsoever. And I just don't find that very believable. Or it rubs me the wrong way, this evil ex-wife trope. So that was unfortunate to see. But maybe it won't bother other people, but that's fine. I also grabbed the rest of the story, also by Tal Bauer, which I think I said earlier. And I haven't read this one. From what I understand, it's about a hockey player who I think joins a new team or gets transferred or something, or he joins the coaching team. I can't quite figure it out. But he gets involved with someone else who's involved with this hockey team. And I don't know anything more than that. I don't know why I bought two of these books at the same time, having never read Bauer before. Like, it would have made more sense to buy one and read it and see if I liked it and then buy more, but I bought both of these at the same time. And I didn't like You and Me. I didn't finish it. I got to 77%, and look, I could have pushed through. It would have taken me an extra 2 hours to finish that book, but I just wasn't into it by that point. I didn't care. The relationship between Emmett and Luke had sort of fallen by the wayside in favor of Luke and Landon's romance. So I didn't see any reason to finish it. The rest of the story, now that I've bought it, I feel like I should give it a go, but it's on the back burner. I'll try it much further down the line, probably. Hopefully I'll like that one better, but we'll see. In terms of audiobooks, I've had a bit more success. So I got Mrs. Wickham by Sarah Page, and this was a 5-star read for me. Very unexpectedly. I grabbed it because it was free with my Audible subscription, and I'm always on the lookout for more Pride and Prejudice continuations, especially if they follow other characters. This was the first one that I've read that follows Lydia Bennet Wickham, who, if you've read Pride and Prejudice, you know she is the youngest Bennet daughter, and in a great scandal, she ran away with George Wickham while she wasn't married, and her reputation was ruined, basically. But they were forced to marry, and so Mrs. Wickham follows them as they start their lives in the north of England, and She is she's struggling because George Wickham is a bit of a rake. He likes drinking and he likes gambling and he likes women, but he doesn't like his wife. But Lydia, she decides that she's gonna pull herself up, and she really, puts her tenaciousness to the test and manages to turn her situation around. And this story was so much fun. It's only a 2-hour audiobook. It's so funny. The characters are so endearing. Even by the end, even I was on Wickham's side. But more than that, it was a good reminder that, you know, people are redeemable. Just because you've done terrible things in the past and hurt people in the past and made mistakes doesn't mean you can't change. Do I think that Wickham from the original Pride and Prejudice would change? I don't know, maybe. But in Sarah Page's story, I could believe it. And it was a great book. I really enjoyed it. I wrote a review for this one as well, so I'll leave that linked too. But yeah, it was great. It also used modern rock music in a really interesting way. And I know in some of the other reviews that I saw, people didn't like this, but I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very effective. Lydia Bennet Wickham is like an 1800s rock star in this story. So I was with it. I thought it was great. The transitions were great between scenes. Overall, fantastic book, 5 stars. Read it if you're interested. Then I got the book with the longest title in the world. Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, The Road to Neverwinter. There's 2 colons in that title. This is the prequel novel to the movie Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, which came out in the last couple of months. Went saw that, loved it. It's great. Great movie. Please watch it, even if you're not a Dungeons and Dragons fan, or if you're not familiar, you don't need to be. It's just a fun movie. And it's got Chris Pine in it, and I love him. So there's also that. Anyway, so The Road to Neverwinter is by J. Lee Johnson. So it centers on Edgin the Bard, who is played by Chris Pine in the film, and it follows him as he meets most of the main characters from the film and the adventures that they have before the film takes place. I am not super keen on the narrator for this book. I think he does some characters better than others, but overall it's fun. It's funny. It's not the best book I've ever listened to. It's not the worst either. It's just a solid story with characters that I really enjoy. And I really enjoyed the film, so for me it's just about getting a little more information about the backstories of these characters that I really loved. So what more do you want, really? I also got Between Us by Vari McFarlane. This is her latest release, her 2023 release, and I don't know a lot about this one, actually. I just grabbed it because I love Vari McFarlane. I've read so many of her books at this point. She does really good adult contemporary like women's fiction and romances. And I think this one is about 2 people who are married and there's some kind of breakdown in their relationship happening. I think maybe infidelity is involved. I don't really know much more than that. There's something about them watching a TV program. I remember that from the blurb, but I don't know what it is or how that's relevant. So yeah, I'm hoping to listen to this one after I finished the Dungeons and Dragons audiobook, because I really love Vari McFarlane and I can get through her audiobooks quite quickly. So hopefully this is a good one. I've really enjoyed her more recent books over her earlier ones. So, and in fact, I listened to her 2022 release at the beginning of this year, and I gave that one 5 stars. So, hopefully, this one will run along the same lines. And then I pre-ordered Yellowface by R.F. Quang. This is a pre-order, in fact. Yes, it's at the time I'm filming this, Yellowface is being released later this week, so I don't even technically have it yet, but by the time the video comes out, I will have it. I am new to R.F. Quang. She wrote Babel, which I read and loved at the start of this year. I know Yellowface is different. It might even be literary fiction. I'm not sure if that would count, but I don't know. It's, from what I remember, a story about two friends who were, I think, in the same creative writing course at a university, and then after that their paths sort of diverged, and one of them became very successful and the other one didn't. But then the one who became successful, I think she dies, and the other one takes her manuscript and passes it off as her own. But the problem is that the original author was, I want to say Chinese American. I could be wrong. Asian somehow. I don't know which country specifically. And the author who has stolen the manuscript is white. And so she's passing herself off as Asian American, I think, to, I guess, take credit for this manuscript and this book, which becomes wildly successful, I believe. So there's a lot going on there, obviously. I think it's going to touch a lot on some of the themes that Babel touched on in terms of colonization and taking on cultures that aren't your own, or taking advantage of cultures that aren't your own. And obviously this is a very big discussion that's happening in publishing now and in the last couple of years. So I'm very interested to see what Quang's take on it is. Hopefully I like this one. But we'll see. It's very different to Babel, it sounds like, but hopefully there'll be something in there that I can grab onto and enjoy. So that brings me to the physical books. Just to kick us off, I'm going to talk about the Unplugged books that I've received over the last 3 months, because we've seen those before, so I'll get through these ones quite quickly. First I got Her Buried Lives by Caitlin L. Duncan. This came in the February box. I don't really remember much about this one. I think it's something about a woman who moves to a rural town with her mother, and then people start turning up murdered, and this woman starts discovering odd things about her past. But I don't really remember anything more than that. I think this might be the kind of story where the main character discovers that she was kidnapped as a child and doesn't remember her original family, and has been living with a woman who has been passing herself off as her mother, but actually isn't. That's my guess, but I don't actually know if I'm going to read this one, because it's just not the kind of book I'm normally drawn to, but we'll see. And then a couple of weeks ago I got Daughter of the Salt King by A.S. Thornton. This came in the March box, and it's a fantasy. I think it's a desert fantasy about a girl or a young woman who's the daughter of a king or a nobleman or something, and he uses his daughters to seduce noblemen, and form alliances that way. But then the main character discovers her father's genie or something, and I think tries to wish for freedom or something like that. That's the vibe I'm getting. I am more interested in this book, so hopefully this will be a fun one, but we'll see. I haven't gotten around to this one yet. And then last week I received Fenian Street by Anne Emery in the April box. This is a mystery. It's set in Dublin and New York. There's something about the Irish mob. I remember that. And I think it follows a man named Shay who grew up in Dublin in the 1970s in like estate housing, and I think someone in his family or one of his friends gets murdered, and then it doesn't get solved, and then he becomes a police officer, and while he's a police officer he's trying to solve this murder, but then someone else gets murdered. That's what I remember. This one sounded interesting to me, so maybe I'll read this one sooner rather than later, but I am in sort of a reading slump at the moment, so I'm not really sort of drifting between various books trying to find something that's going to stick, but hopefully this one is enjoyable. So around 6 weeks ago I just did a random book order because I was bored, as you do. I wanted to feel something. One of those books was Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. This one's been on my TBR for a couple of years actually, so it's good to finally have it. This is a story set in the 1950s and 60s in San Francisco, and it centers on a young woman named Lily. Yes, Lily, who is Chinese American, and she's also a lesbian, and she meets another young woman whose name I don't know, Kathleen, at, I have to assume, the Telegraph Club. And she's also a lesbian. So it's a historical same-sex relationship type of story. Also involves a racial element. I know there was a lot of stuff about communism going on in the 1950s, I believe, and a lot of anti-Chinese sentiment. So I imagine that's also going to play a part in this story, but I don't really know much about it beyond that. So hopefully it's a good one. I think I've heard a lot of good things about this one anyway, so that's encouraging. In the same order, I also grabbed The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Bullman. I think this is more of a sort of stock standard fantasy about a group of people. Can you tell I haven't read the blurb in a while? Something about a Takers Guild of thieves. There's a debt. He's trying to get some money to pay back this debt. Oh, there's a female knight. That's quite cool. So he tries to rob this knight, and their fates become entangled. I don't know anything else. I haven't read the blurb that closely, but I have been hearing about this book for a while, and it's not even that long, really. It's like about 400 pages, which is great for fantasy, and the chapters are short. So, oh, and there's a photo of this cat in the back. In the acknowledgements, the author's cat has been acknowledged. I love that. I'm already a fan. I don't know when I'm going to read this one. Hopefully soon. Hopefully it's good. But it sounds like it's just sort of, your run-of-the-mill fantasy story. Doesn't have to be anything special, but, I also grabbed The Foxglove King by Hannah Whitten. I burned through this book. I loved this. I hadn't read any of Hannah Whitten's books before, although they were on my TBR. So this is my first one by her, and I really enjoyed it. It's quite different in tone from her other books, from what I understand, but doesn't matter. This is the first in a trilogy? Maybe it's definitely a series. Came out in February, I think, of this year, and it's about a young woman named Law, who is basically a necromancer. She can reanimate the dead and pull dead energy out of things and put it into living things. And her secret is discovered because this necromancy is illegal outside a particular order of monks. So her secret is discovered and she is brought into the royal palace and basically blackmailed into spying on the crown prince, who the king alleges is working with an enemy nation to bring down this country that they're living in. However, it's not that straightforward. So Law is given like a monk bodyguard who's named Gabe, and they're posing as cousins to sort of infiltrate these noble circles. And Gabe, look, he's a bit of a stick in the mud. I didn't enjoy him as a character. I think he was really annoying, but he is there. And they also come into contact with the crown prince, whose name is Bastion, and he's a lot more fun. And they're all sort of being drawn together somehow, in ways that I have sort of ideas about, but I'm not going to talk about them here because I don't want to spoil anything. But it's it's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed most of the characters. Bastion was my favorite. And the story and the magic, the political fallout, the ending was so good. It went in a direction that I wasn't expecting. So yeah, this is a fun one. I'm very excited to read the next book, which is coming out in I think January of next year. So very keen to read that. It's already highly anticipated. So yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Didn't write a review for this one though. I just didn't have anything to say. It was just one of those books that was really solid, really enjoyable. If you're looking for a good, fun, easy fantasy story that doesn't take itself too seriously and isn't too heavily political, this might be a good one for you. I am hoping though that it doesn't end up being one of those love triangle situations. Like, they could all just love each other. That would be great, make my life so much easier. But we'll see where it goes. And now the last two. I received In the Lives of Puppets by TJ Klune. This is the special Waterstones exclusive edition. It's signed? Yeah, got a signed copy. I'm a big fan of TJ Klune's, particularly of his Green Creek Wolf Song series. And this is his latest release. I didn't love this one. Gave it 3 stars. I wrote a review for it actually, so I'll post that as well. It's about a young man named Victor who has been raised by an android named Geo. And so he views Geo as his father. And over time, Victor, also discovered like the decommissioned bodies of these 2 other androids in the nearby scrapyards. So he found Nurse Ratchet, who is a medical android. She's very sarcastic. I loved her. In fact, she was the only character that I loved consistently from start to finish. She was great. He also discovers and restores a vacuum that he names Rambo, and Rambo has anxiety. And Rambo, I loved him at the start. He really grated on me at the end. So, you know, but I know a lot of other people have loved Rambo. And then, so the story sort of kicks off when Victor, Nurse Ratched, and Rambo are exploring the scrapyards, and they discover another decommissioned android who is extremely humanoid. And they take him back to their home in the forest where they live with Geo. And Victor restores this robot. They name him Hap. And Hap is mysterious. He doesn't remember where he came from or what his purpose was. But through various circumstances, he brings danger to their doorstep. And Geo is taken captive and taken away to the city of Electric Dreams. So Victor, Hap, Nurse Ratched, and Rambo go on a journey to this city with the goal of rescuing Geo and bringing him back and restoring him to their lives. And I don't know what else I can say beyond that, really. You'd have to read it to find out more. I had a lot of mixed feelings about this one. It also took me longer to get through than I was expecting, and I don't think that helped. But yeah, it was fine. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. It has a really strong found family element, which TJ Klune likes to do. Also had really strong characters, even though I didn't like most of them a lot of the time. They were all very distinct. So again, we have Klune's very strong character work. It's just, yeah, this one didn't work for me as well as his other books have, which is a shame, but still glad to have this very pretty copy. And finally, the last book on the list is One for My Enemy by Olivia Blake. This is also another Waterstones one. Got roses on the front and really cool end papers, I think. Yes. So, quite cool. And then a different one on the back, I think. Yeah. So, from what I remember of this book, I haven't read this one yet. So from what I remember of the blurb, it's sort of like a Romeo and Juliet with mafia families, I think. I think they might also be witches. And then something happens that they have to form different alliances with each other so that they don't all collapse under this power struggle. I can't remember many other details. I know this one sounded quite interesting to me when I first read the blurb, which is encouraging. Oh god, they have some long chapters. That's not good. Yeah, that's gonna be a problem. I'm in a phase where long chapters just don't work for me. I lose all motivation because it makes me feel like I'm never making any progress. So that's gonna be a tough one to deal with. But you know what? Hopefully the story itself will make up for it, and the characters. Olivia Blake, I'm sort of touch and go with at the moment. To be fair, I've only read 2 of her books so far. I loved the Atlas 6, which I read last year. I do have the sequel, The Atlas Paradox, but I still haven't read that one. And then earlier this year, I read her standalone novel, Alone with You in the Ether, which was a romance, and I didn't like it at all. I had a lot of problems with those characters and the way that relationship was portrayed. So it also felt a bit pretentious. So hopefully this one will be better, but we'll see. I have middling hopes. Yeah, if nothing else, at least the cover is pretty. So at least there's that. And that's it. Those were all the books that I acquired this season. Pretty good mix of stuff in this one, actually. I am surprised by the spread of genres, now that I think about it. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed whatever this was, this book haul, and that there's maybe some books in this list that interest you and that you would be interested in looking up for yourself. I hope you're having a great day wherever you are, and I'll see you next time. Bye.